Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Aico TV. I'm Alex Garmston.
And I'm Holly Moore.
And today we have an action-packed episode for you. But firstly, we want to announce that we are the double award winners at the Electrical Wholesaler Awards. We won awards in the following categories, Holly.
We won Best Customer Service Brand, and we also won Best Training Provider for our expert installer training.
So thank you for everyone that voted for us. We are extremely grateful. Just a quick mention, we were highly commended for our best product, which was the EI 1000G Gateway. Hopefully we'll have better luck with that next year. But thank you ever so much for voting. And here's what's coming up on today's episode.
First up, we have our RSMs Paul Barrett and Adam Burch. Speaking to John Winstanley from Saxon Weald.
Then we have the Leeds project part 2 with our national sales manager Daniel Little and Luke Loveridge of HomeLINK.
Then we have our operations manager Lee Duffy speaking to Darren Edwards from Tech Severn.
Then we finish with the all popular FAQ, and this week it's what alarm is triggering the system with our technical advisor Indra.
For the first segment of today's show, we're going to join our RSMs, Paul Barrett and Adam Burch. They're going to be in the studio discussing mould and condensation, how it can affect properties and what you can do to combat this. Later in the session, Paul Barrett is going to go on site to see John Winstanley, who's the electrical manager at Saxon Weald, and they're going to discuss John's experiences with these issues. Let's head over to them now.
Hi, welcome to Aico TV. I'm Adam Burch, the Regional Specification Manager for the Midlands North. I'm joined today by Paul Barrett, who's the Regional Specification Manager for the South Coast. And today we're going to be looking at the Homes Act of 2018. Now, the Homes Act refers to an array of hazards or potential hazards, but today we're going to be focusing primarily on condensation, damp and mould. What impact that can have on the fabric of the building, what impact it can have on the tenant itself, and a few solutions as to how it can be avoided in the future. We also have a video from when Paul met one of his clients, Saxon Weald, and then we'll be looking at what the future holds in terms of Aico and what we can produce to avoid these issues. So, Paul, the Homes Act. What exactly is the Homes Act?
It's sometimes referred to as the Fitness for Human Habitation Act. It's a piece of legislation obviously brought out in 2018. It did originally apply to social housing, but it's now kind of covers any rented property.
And what specifics are in this legislation? Essentially, it details 29 hazards within the piece of legislation that landlords need to identify with to make sure that the tenants are kept safe. Quite obviously, their well-being is essential. And what we've done is we've kind of focused on 5 of those. So the couple of obvious ones for Aico are CO and fire, but also the damp condensation side of things too, and the air quality that's within the property as well. And what happens if any of those criteria fall below standard?
Well, it's the implications to the social landlord are quite extensive, really. Firstly, they need to sort the problem out. So tenant engagement is kind of key with this. If they don't identify with the problem and start talking to the tenant, then they can be taken to court, and there can be some really hefty compensation to be paid.
Yeah. And what's the best way for the social landlords to avoid this happening?
Well, really, just talking to the tenant is the kind of key, but quite often that doesn't happen. So tenant engagement, as I said, is the main thing really. KPIs, putting things in place to maintain that they do, if something does get flagged up, then they deal with it straight away. Quite obviously, they want to do that anyway. There are some issues where people are actually going to tenants and asking if they've got damp and mould, and this is where the court cases kind of start. So if they can avoid that problem and get to solve the problem kind of early, then that's the key. So what are the main causes of the damp and mould?
Well, to generate the moisture, it normally comes from the kitchen and the bathroom, the wet rooms. That's quite obvious. Obviously, showering, cooking creates a lot of moisture in the property. Now, if you've got inadequate ventilation that can't draw that air out fast enough, it's obviously going to spread into the rest of the property. I think we naturally, as humans, we do create moisture. I think that needs to be considered in all this. Each person on average creates 4 pints of water a day into the atmosphere. So if you think of a family of 4, that's 16 pints of water. And if you were to actually visualise 16 pints of water, it's a lot of moisture that's circulating around that property that you need to draw out or get out somewhere. So that's in the atmosphere. That's before you even throw into the argument things like pets, large pets, fish tanks. And what's been happening recently, or more and more recently over the years, we're making properties a lot more airtight. So insulation is getting better.
So where are the kind of places that you would start to see a build-up of mould?
You'd normally see it around the windows and doors to begin with. We've got a few pictures here that you can see. The mould starts to generate around the window frames because it's generally one of the coldest spots in the room. External walls is a big factor as well. Around the ceiling, this could be from, particularly on the top floor of a property, it could be when the loft insulation isn't pushed tight to the corner, so it's a little bit cooler than the rest of the room. And that's where you tend to get a build up there. But as you can see on these pictures, as it's progressively getting worse, if it's untreated, you can get a real issue, and it will naturally just grow and spread into to the full room eventually, as you can see here.
And I guess the way is there a way of stopping the mould apart from doing something within the property? I mean, are there any chemicals that can be used?
The mould can be treated and cleaned and washed. The problem is if you continue to do that, you're not eradicating the problem at source. You're not tackling it. Yeah. I think education, you mentioned it at the start, that is a key factor in this. The tenant has to be involved. You need to make them aware of what impact they're causing. Naturally, them being in the property, going by the day-to-day activities, is going to have an impact. And I mean, particularly today, I mean, a lot of people are spending a lot more time at home than what they have been in recent times. The more and more build-up of moisture is only going to increase.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So, as you said earlier, I went to Horsham in West Sussex and met with John Winstanley from Saxon Weald Homes, and they're having some real issues with condensation and mould. And this is the video about it. The subject of damp and mould might sound like quite a dull and mundane subject to talk about. Since the 2018 Homes Act came about, it's become a real issue for social landlords across the UK. I've driven to Horsham in West Sussex today to meet John Winstanley from Saxon Weald Housing Association to discuss some of the issues that they've been experiencing. So as I said, I've come to meet John Winstanley today. He's come to meet me in this void, as you can see. So John, what's the main kind of issue you have with damp and mould in this type of property? Is it people do they report it first, or is it you find it later kind of thing?
Well, both really. The reports are the hardest ones to deal with because it tends to come through as it's a complaint about damp, and as you probably know, the majority of the time it isn't damp, it's condensation that we tend to see. So for us it's just kind of trying to educate the tenants how they can combat condensation, what they can do themselves to stop the build-up of it. Yeah, of course. So it's just more about kind of educating them, but I guess it's quite often too late. By the time you get in, it's become a real issue, and you've got to spend some money and kind of get it right. Do you get many complaints? Yeah, it's something that's becoming more and more now. There's probably a few reasons for that. One, like the price of electric heating certainly been a consideration recently. The price of electricity puts people off using the heating, which again leads to the chance of more condensation and more mould building up for them.
I've not really thought of that. I guess also because of COVID, people are kind of inside more. They haven't been able to get out and about, so I guess that's kind of quite key. So we've got a small example of how things can start off, John. So what do you think's kind of caused that?
Well, the condensation build-ups, generally the moisture in the warm air sticks to cold spaces. So the window reveal is a common one. When you've got condensation, moisture in the air, it will stick to the cold surfaces. So.
Exactly, yeah. So the kind of electric heating, like you said, against that cold surface is gonna kind of trigger it really.
Yeah.
When you you get a kind of complaint, someone calling you up and just saying that you've got damp and mould? Is there a process that you kind of adopt at the moment as a company?
Yeah, we've got a process map with every step in place, what you need to do. Quite often there's some questions what the people who take the phone call can ask, just to determine what exactly they're dealing with, and from that point it will normally go to a surveyor who will have to go out to look at the property, look to see if it is damp or if it's condensation. Sometimes after that we'll arrange a professional surveying company to come out to see what they can find and see what they'll suggest.
Brilliant, okay. Do you think it's quite often down to like lifestyle, or do you think it, is it sometimes just to do with the structure of the building, or is it quite often lifestyle?
It's a bit of both. I mean, it's mainly the lifestyle we find, and again going back to the heating, people don't like putting the heating on and opening windows and ventilating the property because they see it as a waste of money warming it up and then opening the windows. So to keep a healthy property, that's kind of what you need to do.
Exactly.
Some bits with the building, some of the older buildings might have bits where they're going to be prone to condensation build up, and we can do things to mitigate that.
Yeah. What kind of age is this building then? Is it?
This is about 15 years old, I think.
15?
Yeah, so relatively good insulation levels. Unfortunately electric heated, but the heating's adequate for the property, it's just expensive to run.
Yeah, electric heating always is and always has been. So when you get a complaint, John, do you find that people are kind of quite angry, or are they quite passive? I mean, what's the general kind of feeling you get?
Getting angry all the time, I think, just from people in society in general, I guess. But they see it as a health risk when they see mould growing on the walls. So. Yeah, and has there been any kind of feedback regarding people actually approaching them to kind of drive that direction, or is it really? Do you think it's just people just kind of? No, we're very aware in the sector at the moment that there is a lot of sort of the lawyers approaching people, looking at disrepair claims and things. Yeah. So sometimes they're pushing the tenant into that and letting them know what to look for and knowing if they've got a chance of claiming money, because of it. Exactly. Yeah, it's happening more and more often. And what kind of work's involved in correcting it? I mean, so once you've got the dam, once you've established that there's a problem there, what work is generally involved? Could it be quite extensive, or is it generally quite superficial? It could range really. The basic things like fitting extractor fans to improve the ventilation, fitting insulation into the property, whether it be loft insulation to stop cold spots, cavity insulation, solid wall insulation. So yeah, the cost could just grow and grow depending on what they actually find the issue to be. Of course, yeah. So when you do get an issue where perhaps there's lawyers or solicitors involved, what would be your organisation's kind of stance on that? How would you deal with it? We want to deal with it directly. We don't need to deal with the lawyers. We can speak to the tenants about it, and that's what we'll try and tell them. Luckily, we're managing to keep it at bay at the moment and deal directly with the tenant. We do want to help them. We'll always look at these situations, but we don't need a lawyer coming in to tell us that we've done wrong or we're not helping. We will deal with it. So. Yeah, good stuff. So do you think, given that quite possibly people are aware of what they need to do to kind of change it, do you think it might help if they're aware of like humidity, the CO2 actually in their environment? Do you think that could help? Yeah, absolutely. I think the more information you can give them, the better. We can give them handouts to say, what the general cause of condensation are, what they can do to improve it, but it won't necessarily mean they'll do anything about it. But the more information we can give them, the certainly the better for us to cover ourselves against claims in the future. So if we can let them actively see the temperature in their property, the humidity levels in their property, and how that relates to the condensation that's building up, it's as much as we can do. So if we kind of go down the more proactive kind of route where people can actually see what's going on, perhaps through an app, that's going to be a positive, obviously. Yeah, and armed with the information that we can give them already about the common causes, and actually seeing in real time the humidity levels of this at the moment, the heating levels of this, we should be able to relate it to what's causing the problem. Fantastic. So John, I know that you use the RF modules with the 3000 series. What do you think is one of the, or what are the benefits really to using RF over cable? There's a couple really. I know people talk about the fact that you can put it on different circuits, so you can't switch the system completely off. But for us it's more, we've got a mix in our properties, so we'll have some existing hardwired systems, and some where we've got the old low bases, so with the module we can just pop it in wherever we need it. But the additional bits bits that we have to fit now. So if we have to fit a CO detector or a heat detector in the kitchen, rather than having to link it into the whole system, we can just pop it in with the RF module. It's a neater installation, it's a quicker installation. So
So obviously the cost is going to come down because it's quicker, I guess.
Yeah.
So that kind of balances up against the cable. Yeah.
So really interesting stuff there from when you met John. He mentions quite a lot about the court cases, and it sounds like it's quite a big issue for him, or could be a big issue in the future.
Yeah, well, even if you look online, I did it the other day. I just went online and just put in damp and mould, and literally a list of about 10 different companies, solicitors, kind of offering their services. No win, no fee. New PPI type thing. So they're going out talking to tenants and just saying that if you've got any damp or mould in your property, then we can represent you, and you might make some money out of it. So that's kind of one of the main issues that social landlords are kind of tackling at the moment. The court cases are happening, and this is what's prompting them to have to do something, and equally us. So where we're going, as you know, everything we do is kind of dictated by what social landlords want.
So what's the best way for them to avoid being taken to court?
I think tenant engagement was what I took from what John was telling me. You know, just talking to the occupant about the issues and trying to rectify them before they become a problem. That's got to be key. As we know, the damp and mould is going to be coming from, the way they live, essentially, normally. Not opening windows, putting clothes on heaters, that's going to create a problem. Just talking to people first off is going to be the key. Yeah.
I've actually been involved in that conversation in my previous role, so I know that complaint process, when the social landlord pegs it back and says it's their issue, I know that doesn't really go down well, and an argument essentially pursues. So I know that delivering that message across in a way that they understand it can be quite difficult. So I know what he's discussing when he says that. Yeah,
just avoiding the them and us kind of situation. Exactly. It's often been that way, and yeah, if we can sort that out early, then that's, as I said, that's going to be key. Yeah.
So it's looking at a more proactive approach, really, isn't it? That's what we're looking at.
Yeah, so putting more emphasis on what the tenant can do to create a better environment for themselves, a healthier environment. As I said, without the damp and mould, has got to be the way to go. And again, as I said earlier, we've developed or manufactured parts based on what we've been told. So we've been told by social landlords that air quality is an issue, damp and mould is an issue, and we now have some sensors that kind of look at that. And more importantly, an app that the tenant can look at and utilise themselves. So we're not actually putting all the emphasis on the social landlord to deal with the problem and watch the problem all the time. What we're doing is we're saying to the tenant, look, this is a better way of living. You're going to reduce your fuel bills. The air quality is going to be better. You're going to be healthier people.
Yeah. Giving them a bit of responsibility. They
Exactly.
can see what they need.
Exactly.
So you mentioned the sensors that we're launching. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so going on what customers have been talking about and asking for, we're now going to be manufacturing a couple of sensors that deal with and identify the issues within a property. So the damp and mould situation, the air quality, so the CO2, not the CO. And the way they're going to be working, as I say, they're sensors rather than detectors. So we as we know, we've got the CO detectors and the heat and smoke detectors, and they're all linked via RF. These sensors will also be working with RF, so they'll be transmitting that information, that data, continuously to the gateway, which is a way that we transmit all the information to the cloud and then to a web portal. So the social landlord can view the information and analyse what's going on and deal with it, really.
And what information is it picking up? What is the sensor?
So there are two sensors. So there's the 1020, which is mainly about the damp and mould situation, so the humidity of the air.
Right.
And then you've got the 1025, which is the same again, but also has a CO2 element to it. So the kind of reasoning behind having two sensors is obviously cost. You won't want to put the full with the CO2 in every room, but the bathroom, the kitchen, prime areas where you're going to get humidity are going to be the places you're going to put them. The main living areas, so the lounge, that kind of area where people are sat for a long time, that's going to be where you put the other detector, so the 1025. You were talking about COVID and the kind of the environment that people are in, being stuck indoors for a long time. The air quality is a big thing, and people don't think about it. It's a nice sealed environment. All very kind of keeping it warm, etc., keeping the cold out. But actually, the air quality is no good. Yeah.
So it's measuring the temperature, humidity, and the CO2.
That's it.
How do they receive that data?
Well, there's an awful lot of data that's going across, obviously. So you get actionable insights. So what the guys at HomeLINK have done is engineered the way that social landlords can actually look at the analytics that they're getting through, and make them actionable. Yeah, that's the kind of key.
So I imagine if you're getting the information at the front end before the mould has actually had time to grow, where the atmosphere inside the property could potentially get to a point where there's mould, it will avoid the complaint process almost. It'll avoid the tenant being angry and ringing up and saying, the argument starting. This
is it. I mean, giving the tenant the responsibility to deal with their own environment in a really positive manner is got to be key. If there are people that want to look at the system to make some money out of it, then that's also going to be taken out of the equations, because, as I said, if they don't deal with the information that they're getting given by the app, then the landlord can then kind of step in and say, well, you need to do this or that, whatever it is to change the way they live, really.
And I'm sure that to sort of tie it back into the Homes Act, I'm sure that if a situation did ever get to court, this information is recorded and can be used and be referred back to.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's a way of going right the way through the process, so people firstly have the chance to deal with it themselves. Yeah. So if it did go to court, then there's that, but also the social landlord is going to be aware of a problem or a potential problem before it gets that far.
Yeah. So to summarise then, if a social landlord was to put one of these systems in place with the sensors and the data, they'd be able to see the conditions within that property, know that it's safe, and if it isn't, they can have the conversation with the tenant and incorporate the app so the tenant can take a little bit of responsibility and alter the conditions within the property.
Exactly that. It's all about compliance, as it always has been. Yeah. Tenant safety, tenant well-being. That's where we've always gone, and that's where we're going now.
Yeah. So from the tenant's point of view, it is that they are essentially in a much safer environment.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So thank you to Paul, Adam, and John. Right now, we're going to head over to a quick break, and we'll see you when we get back.
Welcome back to Aico TV. We're now going to go to the second segment of our episode, which is part 2 of the Leeds project, where our National Sales Manager Daniel Little with Luke Loveridge of HomeLINK will be sitting down and discussing smarter homes with the Leeds City Council. Luke will be chatting with Alison Wallace, the Senior Research Fellow at Centre for Housing Policy at the University of York, and Maria Hone, Associate Professor at School of Healthcare at the University of Leeds, to discuss their research and talk about Leeds City Council and how they're creating smarter homes. Let's take a look.
Hello and welcome to the second episode, an update from the Leeds City Council project. Today we've got interviews with 2 leading experts that are working on the project with Luke from HomeLINK. Nice to see you again, Luke.
Hi Daniel, and again, great to be here and hope everyone's keeping well.
Perfect. So you've got two interviews for us today with 2 leading experts from academia. I think if we start with the first one.
Yeah, so as you say, we've got 2 experts, local experts from the University of York and University of Leeds. Our first up is Alison Wallace. So she's a Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Housing Policy at the University of York.
Hello everyone, I'm joined here today by Alison Wallace, who is a Research Fellow at the Centre for Housing Policy at the University of York. Hi Alison.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to run through a few questions on the University of York's work and the Centre for Housing Policy, your own research, and a bit of some questions around the project that we're doing in Leeds. So first things first, can you tell me a bit more about the work of the Centre for Housing Policy at the University of York?
Oh, yeah. Well, CHP has been going since the early 1990s, and there's been a number of research interests pursued over those years, frequently associated with the main housing tenures. So we've done a lot of work on home ownership and private renting, as well as homelessness as well. We've got quite a lot of interest there. But what unites all the different projects in the centre is that there's an interest in exploring sort of social and housing inequalities, really. And we want to sort of inform debates that lead to some change. I mean, we've worked for all the normal research councils and philanthropic trusts and things, but we're very much at the policy orientated end of academic research. So we've also worked for the government departments like MHCLG and DWP, but also like Shelter, Lloyds Banking Group, Nationwide Foundation Crisis Shelter and things. So there's always a perception that academics are only interested in really sort of esoteric issues, but we're very much interested in producing work that can be acted upon and that would inform practice.
Excellent, and yes, a breadth of experience there and really relevant to what we're doing. Can you tell me a bit more about your specific research interests?
Mine have varied quite a lot. Before I came back to university about 20 years ago, I used to work in social housing. So I retain a sort of strong interest there and feel sort of comfortable in that space, as it were. But I've done a lot of work as well in looking at affordable home ownership schemes and the sustainability of home ownership. We've also just completed a project for Nationwide about landlords and private renting and their appetite for investing in the housing benefit market. But I've also done work on using all sorts of big data and things, looking at overseas investment in London's housing market. So it's quite eclectic, really. But more recently, I've been bidding on some work that explores new technologies and the way that might shape access to housing, like credit scoring, tenant checks based on credit information markets. And another one, we've been working with some health scientists to develop something about mental ill health in housing. So I sort of feel like this Leeds project combines the two with health and new technology.
Well, yeah, interesting dovetail there. So just mentioning new technology and the Leeds project, can you tell us a bit more about some of the work that you're undertaking in the Smart Home project with Leeds and HomeLINK?
Yeah, we've been working with HomeLINK and Leeds City Council over the last few months, and with some colleagues at the University of York and the University of Leeds. So I'm working with people with a range of different expertise in fuel poverty, public health, indoor air quality and housing. And over the last few months, we've been really looking at devising a survey to send out to tenants next month and planning a series of interviews with tenants so that we can really discuss issues in more depth with them than the survey allows. So it's been a really interesting project, but I've spent most of my time really chipping away at far too many questions that one person could cope with, and saying no to my colleagues and cutting back on so it's quite manageable for the tenants. But we've also been working out how we can link the sensor data and the repair information data to the survey data, and making sure it's all safe and secure and GDPR compliant and things. So I think we're going to really end up with a really rich anonymous data set that's going to help us answer the questions.
And how many sort of surveys are you looking to do and interviews?
Well, we're hoping to get about 400, 300 and something, 400 responses from people who've had the intervention, and then people so have had the sensors installed in their homes, as well as people who haven't, so that we've got that sort of comparison. And we're going to look at them before they've had their sensors installed, and then afterwards 6 months later to see what has changed. That's the main sort of data collection issues. Yeah.
And the project's got two elements to it. One's around maintenance, so how can the landlords, deliver a better service in terms of maintenance, and empower residents to improve the living conditions of their home. But another really important aspect is around the health and well-being within their home. So why is housing so important to health and well-being?
Well, I think that this last year with the COVID pandemic has really reignited interest in between the relationship between health and housing. I mean, what does it mean to stay home when your home could actually be a potential health hazard to you anyway, if it's in poor condition or it's overcrowded, or for example. And there's been some really sort of seminal reports over the last decades from Professor Marmot at UCL, who has done these reports and really sort of illustrates how housing is one of the main determinants of health. So it sits right up there with sort of education and income and work and social networks. It's really important. And when you think of housing policy anyway, it's always been linked back to public health. Its origins lay in the sort of Booth's maps of East London and the late Victorian Britain, where they got rid of all the sort of cramped slums and back-to-back housing designs, and because they wanted to minimise health harms from contagious disease. And even here in York, we had Seabohm Rowntree look at poverty in York at the turn of the last century, and that was all really about how working class people were living and their conditions in terms of health. But the things that we're going to be looking at in terms of cold, mould, damp and the pollutants in indoor air quality, they're all evidence to be associated with physical ill health, so respiratory diseases, asthma, COPD and things, but also mental health as well, low mood and depression, and that's a real part of health services now. But you said it's to do with maintenance as well, and we know that social housing actually has the best maintained properties, where on average, when you compare it to home ownership and private, and especially private renting. But we also know social housing tenants are often more vulnerable in terms of lower income people, or they've already got pre-existing health conditions as well. So actually, we don't want to add to the over monitoring of low income people, but there could be real benefits here that are really worth exploring in terms of minimizing some of the exposure and risks that people have to some of these issues.
And actually, just building on what you said, my next question sort of goes into what issues being explored in the project, which you've started to outline, could actually be applied wider in the country, and what significance would that have on society?
Well, we're really interested in the tenants, about how they manage their home and how they use their home, in how they dry their clothes and things, their attitudes to new technology and sharing data. But we want to think about how these technologies could actually improve the management of the self-management of the home, but also help housing staff manage properties. And I think there's a huge interest in digital housing, what housing organisation of the future could look like, and how we can use these sort of data repositories and things to actually inform housing management and property maintenance practices and things. So I think there'll be like a huge appetite for looking at what the results of this project will be, and also the potential to other things. Like we talked about the relationship to housing and health. Could health or social care professionals in use this data as well, in terms of looking at what harms people may have been exposed to, or trying to help them manage their conditions and things. So yeah, I think there's lots of applicability to other things, and if there, how health expenditure is hugely significant. So anything that we can do to not only improve people's health and well-being, but also manage our resources better, it has huge potential. So it's definitely worth exploring.
And I think that's very important in the time that we're living in. So going out of the pandemic, people have been living in their very much cooped up in their homes for over a year now. With the economy not growing, or potentially in recession, there's a sort of dual aspect to this technology which could potentially help address, or at least mitigate, some of those health effects we've been seeing.
I think so, and also, but it sort of can flag up, rather than just sort of going around in endless circles with tenants and landlords sort of blaming each other for whatever's happening in the house. We can this sort of technology has the potential to chart a path through that, to say these issues, what are the issues that are really at stake, and studying it in sort of real-time data. So I think it's going to add a fresh perspective on sort of quite a thorny issue in social housing. So
brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Alison. It's been a pleasure, and it'd be good to sort of catch up with you again when the project's more progressed, and when the results are coming in.
Yeah, can't wait.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alison.
All right, you're welcome.
It's great to see there's such a depth of experience within York University.
Agreed, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what those survey results are, and also the interviews as well. I think it will produce some quite interesting results.
Yeah, fantastic piece of research. And our next interview today is with Maria. Yeah,
so University of Leeds, Maria Horn. So she's an associate professor in the School of Health, Community Health at the University of Leeds. So she's got a huge amount of experience in terms of working with public health professionals, and she'll be working on the project on basically helping to advise those other public health professionals to understand how they can use our system, and also understand the long-term impact of some of these conditions that we're looking to address, such as COPD and effects on asthma, for example. Perfect. Here you go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today I'm joined by Dr. Maria Horn, an associate professor in community and public health at the School of Healthcare at the University of Leeds. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Luke. Nice to meet you again.
Thanks, and thanks for taking some time out your day to speak to us today. It's been quite a busy period for public health recently, hasn't it?
It has, but it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so obviously you're a key contributor to this project that we're doing with Leeds City Council around social housing. But first, I just want to get a bit of more of an understanding about your background and the School of Healthcare. So could you tell me a bit more about the School of Healthcare at the University of Leeds?
Yeah, sure, Luke. The School of Healthcare is a top 50 rated university internationally, and the School of Healthcare itself wants to really do impactful research around health and well-being, and actually inform how to deliver healthcare effectively, and that people understand what healthcare interventions are and what that means for them. So we have kind of 4 main research themes, but the one that I align myself to is the long-term conditions theme, and that tries to bring together a range of researchers across the School of Healthcare that are involved in trying to look at the management of long-term conditions, but that includes the social determinants of health. So looking at really how we can manage these social determinants to improve health, and how personal empowerment can support health and well-being.
Excellent. And you mentioned like the area of expertise that you're particularly interested in. Can you tell me a bit more about some of the research that you do, and some of the publications that you've had over the past few years?
Yeah, my main research theme, I suppose, is the promotion of health and well-being across the life course. So I've kind of got 3 main research areas. My first main research area around promoting health and well-being is through increasing physical activity levels, and I've done quite a lot of work in and around that from a public health perspective, and particularly looking at increasing levels among physical activity amongst minority groups. So I have several publications in that area and around cultural tailoring of interventions to increase those activity levels. But I've also looking at also the promotion of health and well-being through digital health and technologies, particularly Internet of Things more lately. And this is starting obviously a very popular area of research, because we can do so much impactful things with digital technologies. And so my research in that area actually stems from work with yourselves around sensor technology, but really looking at how digital technology can improve health and well-being within people's homes, and helping them to self-manage their conditions.
Excellent. I suppose that links, partly to your other research, because this project, is aiming to be as inclusive and accessible as possible as well. So I suppose that's one of interesting areas of this project. So taking that into consideration, can you tell me a bit more about the work you're doing on this smart home project with Leeds and HomeLINK?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're working with York University, so it's a joint initiative with York University, working with yourselves and Leeds City Council, and we're looking at actually how we can improve housing management to enhance health and well-being, bearing in mind that people spend a lot of their times in their home. So basically,
very recently as well.
Yeah, that's
a lot more
with the COVID pandemic, quite. And again, actually, a resurgence into the interest into housing and health, actually, with the COVID. So, yeah, so what we're doing is, obviously, you're installing sensors into the homes, and these are environmental and other sensors that can pick up things such as damp and mould, but also issues around how heating, and electricity use. So what we're looking at is to see actually if by installing these sensors, that actually people's behaviour around how they manage their air quality and heating conditions within the home, can they manage that better to improve their health and well-being for themselves and their families. So we're working, it's very much a multidisciplinary team, and obviously we're working with yourselves as HomeLINK, who are the providers of this fantastic technology, but also with Leeds City Council, who own the social housing stock within Leeds, and therefore have an important public health duty to communities. So what we're doing is doing a series of surveys. Once these sensors are installed, we're going to interview people about how they feel about having this technology in the home, how it's actually influenced them in actually impacting on their health and well-being? Has it changed the behaviour around how they manage damp and mould, etc.? And looking, and for me specifically, I'm also going to interview public health practitioners and social care practitioners to see how such technology can assist them to help people to manage their health conditions or improve and promote health and well-being.
I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders involved, from housing management through to public health professionals as well, and healthcare professionals like the NHS, which is really interesting. And obviously this project is focused on improving health and well-being of people in their homes. But, you know, as a public health professional, why is housing so important for health and well-being?
Basically, housing and health have been important to public health for an awful long time. But actually, we've seen a resurgence again in housing and public health with obviously the COVID pandemic. And essentially, people spend a lot of their times in the home. And what we know is that actually housing is very important towards maintaining health, improving it, and improving well-being. So the impact actually on physical health is actually quite clear. We do know that damp surroundings can cause respiratory conditions, or a broken stairwell, you know, can lead to trips and falls. And I'm thinking about elderly people here. So actually the quality of housing and how that housing is heated and maintained does have important health aspects in terms of public health, but also in terms of public health on people's mental health and well-being as well. And I think that's also been highlighted with the recent pandemic as well. So there's a lot of reasons that we need to focus on actually joining public health and housing back together again and working towards improving people's health, because this is where people live and therefore health is created within that environment.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. I mean, a lot of people focus on, you know, sort of the physical impacts of poor quality housing, you know, as you mentioned, damp, poor indoor air quality on asthma sufferers or people with COPD, etc. But if your home's really your sanctuary, isn't it? And if you can't get away, you know, the impact on your mental health, it seems something rising up the agenda, and I think something which, you know, potentially after COVID could be a bit of a latent build up of mental health issues there. And actually this sort of segues into my last question. So in terms of some of the key issues that we're exploring, you know, we mentioned sort of condensation, damp, mold and air quality, but also mental health. What are sort of the wider applications or significance to society that this project and the research could potentially highlight or create some awareness about?
Well, first of all, I think it's what we're trying to see is really how acceptable such technology is within the home, and actually do people value having such sensor technology in their homes, and can they see the link to actually themselves managing their health and well-being through having these sensors within the home. So if it's acceptable, then actually how easy is it to install, and well, we're gathering data around that. And then from there, if it is acceptable to people to have these sensor technologies within the home, how can health and social care professionals actually use this type of technology to assist people in maintaining their health and well-being? Obviously, what we're trying to look at here are the ethical dimensions around data, what data we can gather and what's acceptable to gather. And so that will be part of the research. But also, I think the application to sort of wider areas of public health, I think are great here. And I think this is a very good testing point for such technology, and then bringing kind of healthcare professionals and social care professionals in this to see how they can actually benefit from this type of technology in delivering what the care that they're delivering communities.
Indeed, I suppose, yeah, not just about empowering people to, you know, look after their own sort of internal environments better, but actually how can you support those networks, supporting those people, support them better. So yeah, that's again another really interesting point. Well, yeah, thank you, Maria. We're you know, quite a way through the first bit of the project now, and you know, got a lot of the installations and participants involved. and starting to get some results. So I expect I'll speak to you again at some point to get an update and see how things are progressing.
Yeah, that'd be great, Luke. Thank you. Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maria.
It's really great to see them putting the residents' health at the centre of this project.
Indeed, and I'm really looking forward to understanding from those focus groups with public health professionals how they can potentially utilise our system and the data from our system to help inform planning for their interventions. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us again. This is episode 2. We will be back in a couple of months' time with episode 3, which will include some interim results. Thanks again for joining me, Luke.
Thanks, Daniel. Always a pleasure.
See you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed the second segment of our episode. It was great to hear from Alison and Maria talking about their research roles at the University of York and the University of Leeds. It's great to hear about how smarter homes are on the up and how they're more and more popular throughout the UK. But now we're going to take another short break and we'll be back with you shortly.
Introducing the SmartLink Gateway and Cloud Portal service from Aico. A new and innovative product developed with registered social landlords and housing associations, giving you complete control and reassurance when monitoring and maintaining your stock of alarms through SmartLink Cloud Portal. Easy to set up, the Gateway is a roaming 2G GSM-based device, ensuring maximum connectivity possible without the need for local broadband or Wi-Fi services, increasing efficiency while remaining compliant with legislation. Featuring real-time alarm status, fault status, text alert and email notification capability for both fire or CO and fault events, as well as installation reports and replacement and fault reports. The SmartLink Gateway and Cloud Portal service is your total solution for alarm maintenance and asset management. The smarter way to check your tenant safety at any time. SmartLink, a revolution in tenant safety.
Welcome back. We're now going to head over to segment 3 of this episode of Aico TV. We're going to be speaking to our operations manager, Lee Duffy, and he will be joined by Darren Edwards, who's the conference manager of Tech Severn. They're going to be discussing the upcoming Tech Severn 2021 conference, and then they're going to be discussing about going carbon neutral. So we'll head over to the session now and see how they got on.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Lee Duffy, operations manager for Aico. I'm joined by Darren Edwards. Darren, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Darren Edwards, conference manager for Tech Severn, and I work for Shropshire Council.
Darren, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
We invited you here to talk about the Tech Severn conference. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so Tech Severn 2021 is a conference that Shropshire Council are hosting. Aico are a key partner to that. They come on board and really kind of powering it for us. So it's a conference looking at essentially climate change and sustainability and how we can achieve net zero, because obviously the government's got its ambitious targets, Aico has its ambitious targets, as does Shropshire Council. So this conference is digital because of COVID and not being able to bring everybody together. It's aimed at business leaders, also because it's digital and it's free to members of the public as well. But this is about engaging with people around what they can do to offset their carbon footprint, what we need to do at a sort of societal level and an economic level to achieve net zero. This is being partnered also by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Obviously, we've got the UN Climate Change Conference later this year in November, so we're essentially a direct link to that, so one of the build-up events to COP26, which is really exciting. And it's about bringing people together, inspirational speakers, companies that have gone through a journey over the last 3 to 5 years, some less, when it comes to what they're doing from a carbon footprint point of view, what they're doing to achieve net zero, and hopefully inspiring people that are attending as delegates as to what they can do as a business, as an individual, and as a sort of society.
That's excellent. It's perfect timing for us because we identified probably 6 to 9 months ago that we were working with a number of organisations that had net zero as one of their agendas, and we weren't doing enough as a company. So recently we've really hammered home this message. We've put loads of work into getting our strategy together, and now we have an ambitious goal, as you said. We've got an ambitious goal to be net zero by 2030. That's going to take a lot of work. and it's going to take a lot of education, especially of our staff, of our suppliers, of our partners. So this is a perfect timing for us, this conference.
Yeah. And I think for the conference, having you guys involved and being really involved as you are, showcasing what you're doing is a kind of a testament to other businesses and what they can do. That, you know, a lot of businesses, because of COVID, might be trying to get back to where they were in 2019, 2020, whereas what we need to do over the next 1 to 2 decades is to sort of really change the way that we operate. So showcasing what Aico is doing, showcasing what, you know, some of the major infrastructure tech companies are doing. So we've got Microsoft, BT on board, who are going to be showcasing, you know, what their technology does in terms of helping other companies to achieve carbon neutrality, but also from their corporate point of view. So Microsoft has been carbon neutral since 2012, and by 2040 they'll have probably sucked out, isn't the right description, but removed the carbon that they've emitted since 1975.
Excellent. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so the person, Ellen Wilson, who's their head of smart cities and sustainability, who's going to be talking at the conference, will kind of showcase their journey that they've been on, and how Microsoft is keen to support other businesses to achieve the same.
No, it's really our social housing sector that we are predominantly in. They've got, I think, sort of 80% of social housing around the UK has set a goal to be carbon neutral. I think it's by 2050, and we are in there. And we're a leader in what we do. We're a leader in the technology. So we had to be a leader within this. We had to lead the way for all of our suppliers, all of our competitors, all of our partners, and all of the local community. Everyone needs to look at us as a leader and see this is the way you go. I think what we've done, the work we've done in the short space of time, has been fantastic, and we've realised what we can actually achieve. We've also realised what we should have probably been doing a bit before, and I think we need to get that message out to people as well. Yes, as you mentioned, COVID has brought businesses down, and now they're just trying to get back to where they were, and to them that would be a win. But that's not good enough. Let's look ahead. Let's see what more can we do. And as leaders within our industry, we have a position to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, a lot of the conference, which I should say is on the 16th and 17th of June, it's about starting that conversation. You know, so there's going to be a mixture of keynote speakers that will talk about their journey, their expertise. You know, we've got people that are quite sort of familiar. Steve Backshall, TV presenter, wildlife expert, who's going to kind of set the scene for us. So from an environmental and from a planetary point of view, where we are right now and what might happen if we don't do anything in the next 3 decades to avert a potential, you know, climate crisis, or a crisis that will only exponentially grow. So he will set the scene for the conference, and then everything that follows that kind of explores different topics. So whether that's the future of agriculture, so how agriculture can be more carbon neutral and achieve net zero, how the future of our infrastructure and our roads needs to change, how transport needs to change, how the energy system needs to change. And it's about starting these conversations. So there's going to be a mixture of keynote speakers that, you know, deliver a 30-minute keynote, but also panel discussions. I think the panel discussions are going to be brilliant because we're going to bring together a real collection of different kind of people that have come from different sectors, and having that conversation around sustainability, what sustainability really is. You know, as you know from your journey over the last 9 months, a lot of businesses need to really understand what sustainability means. And I think these panel discussions will really tease out some of those kind of like key topics, and will be a conversation starter, hopefully, for businesses that are watching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never shy in saying when I don't understand something. And right back at the beginning of this journey, when the question was first posed to me, I didn't have a clue. And it's not, people feel like they can't be open, I think, sometimes, and say, I don't understand what I have to do to achieve this. This conference is going to be perfect for that. It's going to provide that platform for people to learn and just give them the information they need. And the panel discussion, we can be open and honest and say, look, we didn't know what we were doing, but we spoke to the people, we created partnerships, we worked with other organisations, and now we've got a real clear vision of what we need to do. We don't know all the answers. Technology is going to develop over the next 10 years. So what we want to do now might be completely different to what we're going to do in 5 years' time. But at least we've got a roadmap, we've got an idea of where we want to go next.
Exactly.
This is a perfect opportunity for us.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about, you know, we don't know where things will be in 5 or 10 years' time from a technology point of view. One of the contributors is Innovate UK, that's the government's organisation that funds kind of like the future of tech and the future of you know, innovation in a broad sense. But they have a department focused on clean growth. So we have Sarah Tennyson, who's the head of clean growth, who's going to be talking about what sort of projects Innovate invest in and some of the exciting stuff that's coming out of that. And there's some stuff that's local to Shropshire. So there's a couple of companies like Ason Group, Salisco, who are kind of, you know, pushing what's possible at the moment from a tech point of view when it comes to sustainability, but also giving a bit of a national flavour for some of the exciting things that the UK is doing. So the UK is becoming like an emerging leader in the renewable sector, in the sort of, you know, sustainability sector, broadly speaking again. And I think the conference will kind of hopefully inspire people that we are on the right direction. Things need to change, like you've said, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening that's going to help us. So in 10 years' time, we might have a lot more tech to help us achieve what we need to by 2030 or by 2050.
I think the thing for a lot of organisations is actually understanding their carbon footprint to start with. I didn't realise till we went on the journey of measuring our carbon footprint, it's not necessarily a thing. I expected just to get a number at the end of it. This is your carbon footprint. It's a size 12 or whatever it is. This is the impact you have, but it's much more detailed than that. And that was the first step for us, was to measure. So we put in a very simple strategy of measure, reduce and balance. And the first thing you had to do was measure. You have to measure what is your impact. And once we understood what our impact was, I mean, a great example here is our second biggest impact on carbon was gas. I looked around the building, and I helped design this building, and I looked around the building and thought, we've only got a couple of radiators. How can that be our biggest thing? It turns out that the air handling units on the roof are warm, that the air coming into them is warmed by gas.
Right.
I didn't even realise till we had somebody come in and have a look at actually measure our impact. And that is actually quite an easy fix. We can put heat pumps in there instead, and we can power those heat pumps with renewable energy. And then all of that gas use goes away almost instantly. And until you actually measure it, you can't begin to reduce it. And then the final bit is the balancing, which is sequestration or carbon offsetting. But at the moment, we're not even going to think about that, because technology, in 10 years' time, that's the last bit. We estimate we can get about 85% of our carbon usage down just by changing the way we operate. And then the last bit will balance off. But the technology in 10 years' time will be completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got the likes of, from a supply chain point of view, Sainsbury's have said that if their suppliers aren't hitting certain sustainability and carbon reduction targets, they won't form part of the supply chain. So the target audience, in part, for Tech Severn is SMEs, companies that might be on the supply chain to larger organisations, whether that's Aico, Sainsbury's, M&S, whoever it might be, that are suddenly finding themselves in a position where they really need to address how they operate and might not know exactly how to start doing that. So I think Aico will stand as a showcase for a company that's kind of gone, right, we need to do something in quite a short time span, and quite recently as well. It's not like you've been doing it for 5 years, which is the case of BT. So Gabrielle, who's the head of environmental sustainability for BT, who's one of our keynote speakers, will essentially showcase what a company can do over a longer term period. So she's been fighting this fight for, I think she said, close to 10 years, but it's only in the last 2 to 3 that people have taken her seriously internally. So we'll have a company like that, we'll have a company like Aico that, you know, it's different journeys, and you know, it'd be interesting to reflect the variety of approaches that's within that.
It's a good point about the suppliers. So we're one of the largest organisations locally, and a lot of organisations want to work with us naturally, as they would. So it isn't on our agenda yet for our suppliers to have to be following our same strategy, but it certainly will be. And if we lead the way, then we don't want to hit them with a hammer and say, right, this is our carbon strategy now, you're going to have to comply, otherwise you can't work with us. But we can slowly work with them on a partnership basis. So our transport's a big part of our footprint, aren't really doing anything yet. And we're one of their biggest customers. So we have a responsibility to go to them and say, look, what are you doing? It's not an issue now. Next year, we want to know what you're doing. The year after that, if you're not doing something, then we're going to have to make some changes. And if people like us don't lead the way, then other organisations won't make that move. Definitely. And if we can do that, then all of our smaller suppliers that we work with follow the same agenda. They ask the same questions of their suppliers. And slowly it brings us all to carbon neutral.
Definitely. And I think it's important to say that, you know, with no agenda here, without Aico's support, this conference wouldn't have happened. You know, when we spoke initially, you guys were obviously on your own journey, so I think it was quite good timing that we wanted to host a conference focused on sustainability and climate change for, you know, for our local business community that we both reside within. And you guys have been, you know, like a key driver and have really powered this from the start. And like you say, hopefully we can inspire and challenge some other, you know, businesses in the region to adopt new ways of working and to kind of give them a helping hand for how they might start.
Yeah, we were actually speaking to a company in a couple of weeks, and they want to come and talk to us specifically about our sustainability projects. Nothing to do with our products. They're not interested in smoke alarms. They're not interested in distribution, transport, anything. They just want to come and talk to us about our sustainability. And that's a big shift I've seen recently in people looking up to us, not just as the leader in home life safety, but the leader in everything we do. The leader in sustainability, the leader in corporate social responsibility, the leader in distribution. We find that a lot. So I think, again, it's all about our responsibility now. We're up there. People have put us on a pedestal. We've got to do the best we can. And this strategy that we have now and supporting the Tech Severn conference is really a big step on the way to get everybody involved. Local companies have always been part of, sort of one of my own personal values is to always support local companies. I'm not from this area, but now I do live and my family are in this area, and I always want to support local companies. So we're going to bring them along the journey with us. And again, Tech Severn is a perfect conference for that. Yeah. So thanks, Darren, that sounds fantastic. So the conference is on the 16th and 17th of June. So if people want to register for that, how do they go about it?
Yeah, so the website is www.techsevern21.co.uk. Okay. I'm not sure if I said earlier, but tickets are free. So we're hoping to engage with a wide audience as possible. All content will be streamed live on the 16th and 17th, but then available online for up to 3 months after the conference. So if people can't watch it there and then, they can catch up, a bit like a sort of iPlayer style.
Excellent. Excellent, thanks. I also hear you've got a personal challenge coming up soon as well.
Yeah, so the conference is on the 16th and 17th. On the 19th, I set off, I'm the expedition leader for Kayak for Heroes. Okay. So we're a team of 5 injured former sort of servicemen. We've got representatives. So I was in the Army Reserve, teammates from the Army, from the RAF. We're going to be kayaking from Land's End in Cornwall to John O'Groats in Scotland.
Really? Okay.
So it's 1,400 kilometres. There are some of the UK's most sort of like challenging, dangerous waters that we need to navigate. Imagine. And it'll probably take about 32 days. Well, that's what the plan is based around. Wow. We're doing it for charity, so we're doing it for the charity that we all met through, which was the Armed Forces Para Snow Sports team. So we all met on a skiing camp in Norway in 2019. I floated the idea of doing something big to kind of raise money to say thank you to the charity, which kind of gives veterans the chance to ski and to learn to snowboard again. So kind of outdoor adventure after whatever injury it is that they sustain. And yeah, so the nearer it's getting, the more I think we're collectively crapping our pants, to try and put it politely. But
I can imagine that's a hell of a challenge. That's all the inland waterways all the way up.
So no, coast.
Oh, coastal.
So North Cornwall, you're partially right. North Cornwall, North Devon, coastline. Yeah. Coming up the River Severn, through the canal networks to Ellesmere Port by Liverpool, and then from there back out on the coast until we arrive in John O'Groats, however long later. Wow,
that's a hell of a journey. I mean, we at Aico, we're no strangers to challenges. We do 1 or 2 every year, really. I'm in the middle of a 1,600-mile virtual race around Europe at the moment, but that makes them pale into significance, really. That's really impressive.
No, thank you.
Very impressed, yeah. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, cheers, Lee.
Thanks.
So thank you to Lee and Darren for that interesting session. We hope you found it interesting, and also very best of luck to Darren for his kayaking expedition. I think you'll need the luck. It sounds very scary.
No. We wish Darren luck and hope he doesn't hit anyone else with his kayak that's strapped to the top of his car. So please keep an eye out for that if you see him. But now we're going to go to the last part of our episode, which is the frequently asked question. And today we are joined by our technical advisor, Indra, who's going to be asking, what alarm is triggering the system? Let's take a look.
When an interlinked alarm system is sounding, there's going to be one alarm that have been triggered. If you do not have a control switch, only way to know which alarm has been triggered, you will need to look for the red rapid light on one of the alarms. Only from this alarm you are able to silence the whole system. Alarms can't be silenced from any of other units except the one that has been triggered. The hush feature will last for 10 minutes. After then, alarms will reset and will function as normal. If there's still smoke present, alarms will start sounding again.
Thank you to Indra there for telling us what alarm could be triggering the system. It's always good to know if you're ever in a spot of bother and need to know. We have multiple frequently asked questions available on our website and our YouTube channel. But that's not all we've got time for today. Holly, we have a virtual event coming up. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yes, I can. So the next event is going to be called What is a Healthy Home? No, it isn't. It's called What Makes a Healthy Home.
That was close. So what makes a healthy home, and when is that event?
It's going to be on Wednesday the 9th of June. It's a virtual event, and it's going to be discussing the Decent Home Standards, the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act 2018, and also the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. We've got some great guest speakers that are lined up to sort of share their knowledge on the topics that we're going to discuss, and we've also got our very own Regional Specification Manager Andy Sturgis, who's going to be delivering a CPD certified module on the Fitness for Human Habitation Act as well. So if you want to sign up, it's free to register. Just visit our Eventbrite page and hopefully see you there.
Yeah, and for anyone who wants to register, that link is now at the bottom of the screen. But that's all we have time for this week. So as usual, please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at the 500 mark, so it'd be great if we could hit that by next week's episode. And don't forget to follow us on the following social media channels:
LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
More importantly, please follow us on TikTok, as we only have 3 followers at the moment since we've only recently launched it.
We have 4, I think.
4 followers, so please follow us on TikTok and share some videos with us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
See you next week.